My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 34 years old, and until last month, I lived the most ordinary life imaginable. For the past 8 years, I worked as an accountant at a small insurance firm in the city. Every morning, I'd wake up at 6:30 a.m. to the same buzzing alarm clock, put on one of my 3 nearly identical gray suits, and commute to an office where the most exciting part of my day was deciding whether to get turkey or ham on my lunch sandwich. I lived alone in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of mildew no matter how much I cleaned. My only hobby was collecting old mystery novels from thrift stores, though I rarely had time to read them. Weekends blended together in a haze of laundry, takeout meals, and half-hearted attempts at socializing with coworkers I barely liked. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in October, something inside me snapped. It happened during my lunch break. I was sitting at my desk, eating the same tuna salad sandwich I had every Tuesday, when I suddenly realized I could recite exactly how every minute of my life would play out for the next 30 years if I didn't change something immediately. That night, I dug out an old camping backpack from my closet and started making a list. I needed to get away. Somewhere remote, somewhere with no cell service, somewhere I couldn't be reached. The next morning, I walked into my boss' office and requested 2 weeks of vacation time, citing family matters. He barely looked up from his computer when he approved it. For the next 7 days, I planned my trip meticulously. I bought a sturdy tent, a portable camp stove, and enough canned food to last 2 weeks. At an army surplus store, I found a heavy-duty flashlight and a hunting knife that felt reassuring in my hand. The clerk raised an eyebrow when I mentioned where I was going. "Black Creek, huh?" he said, running a finger along the knife's edge. "Heard some strange stories about those woods." When I pressed him, he just shook his head and said, "Just watch yourself out there." The night before my departure, I barely slept. My tiny apartment was filled with gear and supplies, the air thick with anticipation. At 4:30 a.m., I gave up on sleep altogether and started loading my truck. The drive took me through increasingly rural landscapes. The highway gave way to county roads, then to narrow Forest Service roads, where trees formed a tunnel overhead. My GPS lost signal about 20 miles from my destination, but I'd printed out maps as backup. The last sign of civilization was a run-down gas station with a single pump. The attendant, an old man with yellowed teeth and suspicious eyes, watched me fill up without speaking until I mentioned Black Creek Woods. "That ain't no place for camping," he muttered. When I asked why, he just shook his head and said, "Some places got memories they don't want disturbed." He refused to say more, just took my money and shuffled back inside. The final stretch of road was barely more than a dirt path. Branches scraped against my truck like fingernails on a chalkboard. Then suddenly, the trees opened up to reveal a clearing with the remains of stone foundations peeking through the undergrowth. I parked near what must have been the village center long ago. The air was unnaturally still, the silence so complete it made my ears ring. As I stepped out, my boots sank slightly into the soft earth, leaving deep impressions. Setting up camp took longer than expected. The ground resisted my tent stakes, as if pushing back against my intrusion. When I finally got them secured, they came up coated in a sticky black substance that smelled faintly metallic. At dusk, while gathering firewood near the largest ruin, a crumbling stone chimney, I spotted something metallic glinting in the fading light. Brushing away layers of dead leaves revealed a rusted metal box about the size of a shoebox. It took considerable effort to pry it open. Inside, wrapped in yellowed newspaper from October 1999, was a single VHS tape. The newspaper headline read, "Local teens missing above a photo of 4 smiling high school students." The tape itself bore 3 words scratched into the plastic: "Watch me alone." My campfire refused to stay lit, snuffing out repeatedly despite dry wood and careful tending. As darkness fell completely, I retreated to my tent with the portable TV VCR combo I'd brought on a whim. The tape began with 30 seconds of static, before revealing shaky footage of those same four teens camping in this exact clearing. They laughed around a fire. The date, 10/31/1999, flashing in the corner. Then the girl with dark hair froze. Did you hear that? The camera swung to show the trees, where something pale moved between the trunks. A wet clicking sound filled my tent's speakers. The teens screamed as the camera fell, showing glimpses of white limbs before cutting to static. At that exact moment, something heavy hit the side of my tent. For hours, something circled my campsite. The footsteps were too measured, too heavy to be any animal I knew. Around 2 a.m., 3 long scratches appeared on the tent wall, the nylon shredding from the outside in. My hunting knife felt pitifully small in my shaking hands. The temperature dropped until I could see my breath fogging in the air. From the trees came whispers, not words exactly, but sounds that almost formed them. My flashlight revealed nothing, but I could feel something watching from just beyond its beam. Dawn revealed my campsite in shambles. Around 4:30 a.m., I saw my supplies were scattered, cans crushed with impossible force. The trees bore fresh carvings, 3 parallel lines in a circle, repeated over and over. My camera had recorded all night, showing only static except for one frame, where a pale, elongated face peered into the lens. I threw everything in the truck, leaving half my gear behind. As I sped down the overgrown road, my rearview mirror showed a tall, white figure standing where my tent had been. Its arms were too long, its head tilted at an impossible angle. Just before the trees blocked my view, it raised one spindly finger to where lips should have been. When I came at my home, the nightmares started immediately. I wake every night at 3:17 a.m. to static blaring from silent electronics. My apartment smells of damp earth no matter how much I clean. The tape disappeared from my truck, but I keep finding film strips in impossible places, coiled in my shower drain, tucked behind my refrigerator, once even woven into my hair as I slept. This morning, I found my bedroom window open despite locking it. On the sill sat a rusted metal box, its lid slightly ajar. Inside, a new tape waits. The label reads, "Your turn." I haven't played it yet, but last night, I woke to the sound of my VCR powering on by itself in the empty living room. And from the speakers came a sound I'll never forget, that same wet clicking from the woods, only closer now. Much closer. My name is David Allen, and for the past 12 years, I've lived alone in my grandparents' old-fashioned house at the end of Maple Street. At 34, I've settled into the quiet routines of a documentary editor's life. My days spent in the changed sewing room upstairs, putting together footage of moving whales or thick jungle treetops for nature shows nobody will remember my name for. The house keeps its own schedule, with sunlight moving across the wooden floors in known patterns. The old grandfather clock in the hallway ringing every half hour, and Miss S. Whitaker's sprinklers next door turning on exactly at 4:15 p.m. each afternoon. It's a life of comforting sameness, until the Tuesday after I returned from that editing job in Portland, when I came downstairs to find my French press already washed and upside down on the drying rack, the glass still warm to the touch. I stood in the kitchen that morning, thinking through possible reasons maybe I'd cleaned it before bed without remembering, but I never did that. My routine was unbreakable. Wake at 7:15, take shower, then make coffee in the freshly rinsed press. That night, as I set the security alarm before bed, I noticed the living room, Curtains were open exactly 3 inches enough to see the old oak tree in the backyard, its branches unmoving in the still night. I could have sworn I'd shut them fully after dinner. The small changes added up like dust in sunlight. Wednesday morning, my slippers sat straight next to the bed, instead of turned toward the door where I always left them. Thursday evening, the television volume kept changing back to 24 when I liked it at 18. Friday brought the first real cold opening my laptop to find a text file with yesterday's shopping list, typed out word for word, including the note to myself about needing to call my mother on Sunday. I hadn't made that file. Mrs. Whitaker noticed my distracted state when I missed her wave on Saturday morning. "You're looking pale, David," she called from her rose garden, her cutting shears shining in the sun. "Not working too much, I hope?" I made some excuse about deadlines, not mentioning how I'd woken at 3:17 a.m. to the smell of my grandfather's pipe tobacco. He'd been dead 14 years. Or how my desk chair now moved to the right height before I even sat down. Then came the morning I found the footprint. A light wetness had covered the ground overnight, and there, beneath my bedroom window, was a single bare mark in the soft dirt, too big to be mine, with a strangely high curve in toes that stretched nearly an inch longer than normal. The police officer who came to my call looked at it with little interest. "Probably just some kids playing tricks," he said, closing his notebook. He didn't seem worried about how something could have left such a deep mark right under a second-floor window, with no ladder marks or moved dirt around it. The pictures started showing up the next week. The first was pushed under my front door. A blurry black and white photo of my bedroom taken from outside. At first, nothing seemed wrong until I realized it showed me sleeping. The time on the image reading 3:17 a.m. 2 nights before. More came with scary regularity. Close-ups of my hands holding blankets during bad dreams. My mouth slightly open in sleep, even one where my eyes were wide open, as if I'd been woken suddenly, though I had no memory of it. Each picture was taken from angles no person could reach without tools. The quiet talking started on a rainy Thursday night. At first, just broken words barely heard over the sound of my bedroom fan. Deadline, mother, garage light phrases I'd said out loud in empty rooms. Then full sentences in my own voice played back clearly, always coming from the direction of the window. That's when I set up the motion-sensing camera, placing it on my dresser to catch whatever came near the glass each night. What it recorded still scares me. The footage shows me sleeping calmly until exactly 3:17 a.m., when the image twists for exactly 1 second. When it clears, there's a hand pressed against the outside of the glass. Fingers too long, nails broken and yellow. As I watch in fear, the hand slowly turns palm up, bending its fingers in a come here motion, just like Miss S. Whitaker waves when she wants me to come over for tea. Last Friday night, I finally saw it completely. I woke to 3 slow knocks, followed by 2 fast, the same pattern I use when typing. The street light outside gave just enough light through the curtains to show the shape standing in my backyard, tall, too thin, shoulders bent at an angle that made my own back hurt just watching. When it turned its head, the movement was off the neck bending too far, the chin lifting upward in a way no person could do. Then it waved, not a friendly wave, but a perfect copy of my own awkward half wave I give neighbors when passing them on the street. I'm writing this from a Motel 40, 3 miles away, though I know distance won't help. The bedside lamp here flickers every 17 minutes. The digital clock goes back to 12 each time I look away. And just now, as I reached for my water glass, I noticed something that froze my heart. The motel window doesn't have a screen. Outside in the parking lot, under the flickering orange light, something tall and thin stands perfectly still, its head tilted at that impossible angle as it watches my window, learning, practicing, getting better at copying the way I scratch my nose when thinking, how I sigh when tired, the exact way I hold a pen when writing notes in the edges of books. Mrs. Whitaker called this morning to say a man who looked just like me came by to get my mail. She said he knew where I kept the extra key, remembered to feed Mrs. Norris's cat while she's away, and made my grandmother's pecan pie recipe perfectly, the one I could never get right, no matter how many times I tried. The alarm buzzed at 6:15 a.m., like it did every weekday morning. I reached across to silence before the noise could wake Sarah, my wife of 12 years, who still slept peacefully beside me. The digital display cast a faint blue glow across our bedroom as I slipped out from under the covers, careful not to disturb her. Our two-story colonial on Willow Lane had been our home for nearly a decade. I'd bought it shortly after being promoted to branch manager at the local bank, back when Sarah was pregnant with our now 10-year-old daughter, Emily. The neighborhood was the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happened, just how we liked it. As I shuffled downstairs in my slippers, the familiar creak of the third step echoed through the quiet house. The smell of freshly brewed coffee surprised me. I didn't remember setting the timer last night. Steam rose from the pot in the kitchen, the red light indicating it had just finished brewing. "Sarah?" I called softly up the stairs. No response. She never woke before me. I poured myself a cup, the rich aroma filling the kitchen. That's when I noticed the newspaper already spread out on the table, open to the business section where I always started. Except we hadn't subscribed to the paper in years. Through the window over the sink, I saw the first real sign that something was wrong. Across the street, the Miller's old house, vacant since old Mr. Miller passed away 5 years ago, had its garage door wide open. A light burned inside, casting long shadows across the driveway. That was impossible. The bank had foreclosed on the property after Mr. Miller's death. The utilities had been shut off for years. I set down my coffee and moved closer to the window. A figure emerged from the garage carrying a toolbox, tall, slightly hunched, with that distinctive, uneven gait from the hip replacement Mr. Miller had gotten the year before he died. He wore the same red plaid jacket I remembered seeing him in every winter morning as he tinkered with his old Chevy. My phone slipped from my suddenly numb fingers, clattering to the tile floor. When I looked back up, the garage door was closed, the light off, the driveway empty. Sarah came downstairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I opened my mouth to tell her, then stopped. What would I say? That I'd seen our dead neighbor working in his garage like it was any other morning? Over breakfast, I watched the Miller's house through the window. Nothing moved except the branches of the old oak in their front yard swaying in the breeze. That afternoon, while taking out the trash, I noticed footprints in the soft earth along our fence line. Deep impressions with that same uneven stride, leading from the Miller's property right up to our back door. The next morning, the coffee was already made again. This time, a single mug sat waiting on the counter, a faint ring of condensation beneath it like someone had just set it down. Sarah found me staring at it. "Did you make this already?" she asked, reaching for the mug. "No," I said too quickly. I must have forgotten I did." She took a sip and made a face. "It's cold." That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the familiar squeak of our backyard gate opening made my breath catch. Then came the sound I'd been dreading. 3 slow knocks on our kitchen door, followed by 2 quick raps. Exactly how Mr. Miller used to announce his visits when he needed to borrow tools. I never answered the door. By morning, the only evidence was a single wrench left on our back porch. The same one I'd loaned Mr. Miller the week before he died and had forgotten about until now. The occurrences grew more frequent. The smell of motor oil and peppermint chewing gum, Mr. Miller's signature scent, would waft through the house at odd hours. Tools went missing from my garage, only to reappear days later, cleaned and oiled. Then last night, as I took out the recycling, I saw him standing at the end of our driveway, under the streetlight. Not a shadow or a trick of the light, but solid and real. He raised one gnarled hand in greeting, the gold of his wedding band glinting in the yellow light. We sold the house last month. The new owners, a young couple from out of state, didn't ask why we were leaving so suddenly. They didn't notice the freshly oiled hinges on all the doors, or the way the garage smelled faintly of peppermint and motor oil. Sometimes I drive past late at night when I can't sleep. The lights are always on now, just like when the Millers lived there. And if I watch long enough, I'll see a tall figure moving behind the curtains, always working, always tinkering, forever maintaining the home he never really left.